Hello, folks. Welcome to Holding On with Holder, where I talk to interesting people about interesting topics. My name is Steve Holder, and I am your host. My guest this evening is Stephanie Mojica, author, editor, and writing coach. Welcome, Stephanie.
Thank you, Steve, for having me. It's an honor to
Thank
be
you for
here.
being my guest. So, tell us about your background. Who are you?
Well, that could take hours, but basically, my name is Stephanie. As you folks know, I have been professionally writing, editing, doing some type of coaching, teaching for 24 years. Was born and raised in the United States. Had a career for 17 years as a newspaper journalist. And I'm currently living in Suriname, a small country in South America near Brazil and Guyana. So that's just the basics about me and who I am.
Okay. So, what inspires you to write?
That's a interesting question because I think the older I get, the less inspiration I feel, and the more I actually just do it. That was especially true when I was a journalist. It was not like I could sit around waiting for inspiration. I had responsibilities and deadlines. So nowadays, I'm focusing more on the teaching of writing and the editing of people's writing, especially coaches, consultants, and other experts who want to write a book. So I haven't done much personal writing lately. I occasionally write for clients, but these days that's pretty limited. I am very selective about who I take on. And then I write social media posts and the occasional blog for my business. So, and I think this is something that I work with on my clients a lot. A lot of folks who want to write a book wait for the inspiration to strike, and that doesn't really happen. It's important to plan time and plan specific goals.
So, what is your writing process like when you do write?
Well, it depends on what I'm writing. So if I'm writing a blog post, I'll generally try to come up with an idea of what I want to write about. This is for my own business marketing. If it's a client, they pretty much tell me what they want me to write about. So these days, I tend to stick to topics I don't need to research because I don't think people understand how much time research takes when it comes to writing. So I literally will just sit down, write the title down, and then just start writing. Sometimes I'll write in the middle, and this applies for blog posts, sales pages, etc. Sometimes I'll write the end first. I just sit down and I make myself write. I also keep a timer running because I track my business time especially. So I feel like I have a deadline, so I don't just sit there and twiddle my thumbs, play with Facebook, etc. I really tried to imitate the deadline because that's just how my brain works.
Have you written fiction and nonfiction?
When I was young, I wrote a little bit of fiction. Not, I've never been crazy about it. I would say mainly nonfiction. On a personal level, I've written some poetry. I've written short screenplays, a couple of longer ones, but I'm just not a fiction writer. It's not really something I particularly enjoy reading or
Yeah.
writing. So, I mean, I edit it for people, but most people who come to me want their nonfiction and poetry edited. So that's just a natural fit.
Yeah. Do you find that writing energizes you, or does it take a lot out of
Well, the older I get, the more it's taking out of me. You know, when I was younger, I'm 41 at the time of this recording. And I know some people, oh, she's 41, big freaking deal. But I've been writing since I was 8 years old. So the older I get, the less it energizes me.
you? Yeah.
And that's another reason I've really focused more in the last couple of years, especially on the teaching of writing, the coaching of writing, and editing, because it does take a lot out of me. It used to energize me. I used to be able to just write, especially when I worked at newspapers. I could just write article after article. And like I said, the older I get, I don't know if it's ADHD kicking in or something, but it gets harder.
Yeah. Everything gets harder as you get older.
Hmm.
So be prepared.
Oh, I'm aware. Yeah, I mean, one of my closest friends is 17 years older than me. He's like, it's just gonna keep getting worse.
You have to constantly find a new normal. Yeah.
Yes, yes.
So do you enjoy editing more than writing then?
I would say so, yes, because while I'm editing people's work, I'm reading it. I'm one of those editors that I read very carefully. I don't go run it through a software program. I am, a true old school editor. I will read every word you write, probably at least a few times. And so, yes, I enjoy it. I don't try to make it my own story when I edit, which I think sets me apart from some other editors. My job, I feel, is to make your story appear the best possible while still maintaining your writer's voice. So I mainly focus, that depends on a client. Different people want different things. But I mainly make sure that people don't make embarrassing mistakes with grammar, spelling, typos, crazy punctuation, inconsistencies,
Yeah.
like saying that something happened when they were 5 years old in one section, and then another section saying that same thing happened when they were six. So just things like that.
The memory of timelines get more difficult as you get older too.
Oh, yes, they do.
So what type of book is the most difficult to edit?
What type of, I'm sorry, I didn't hear that first part.
What type of book is the most difficult to edit?
I would say poetry because some people do different things with punctuation, capitalization, etc. in poetry. So it's my job not necessarily to be the grammar, punctuation, capitalization police on that, but just make sure they're not doing anything that's too crazy. Although some people are doing things like doing the lowercase I, the letter I, instead of the uppercase I. So again, it's just my job to make sure whatever they're doing is consistent.
Yeah. So your clients argue with you a lot about different things?
99% of my clients don't argue. I have a pretty established reputation, tons of testimonials. People who come to me have generally been referred
Yeah.
or heard me on a social media site like Clubhouse or saw my Facebook or LinkedIn posts for years, knew me from the newspapers. So most people are pretty much like, I trust you, you're the expert. I have had a couple people get a little whiny, especially fiction writers. That's another reason I just don't do a lot of fiction editing. They feel like, well, this thing changed, it ruins my story. And so, yeah, but most of my clients are really great. But again, I've become very selective, especially in the last couple of years, of who I work with. I just turned somebody down this morning because they wanted me to write a very one sided story about Biden's new tax plan.
Mhm.
And that's not acceptable to me.
So you try to be more objective.
I try to still keep that journalistic value. And just for the record, I'm not crazy about either party. I don't want people like posting comments like, oh, she said something bad about so and so and so and so. But, I was like, if I'm going to write about this, I want to show both sides.
Yeah.
And I just felt like that this person had an agenda. And plenty of writers will do that work. But I have a journalistic background and I just have gotten into the phase where I'm not going to do something I feel is unethical or that I really don't want to do.
Yeah. So how many books have you edited?
Oh gosh, probably hundreds. I mean, seriously, I wish I had an exact number. I mean, because some books are short, like 10,000 words, and I did a lot of those, especially like between 2010 and 2018. But right now I'm editing two books. I think I've edited probably maybe 15 or so this year. But lately I've been doing longer books, just focusing more on people who have the longer books because I find that people who have really short books tend not to have a good budget for editing.
Yeah.
So this is a challenge.
Yeah. Editing is a writer's nightmare. We all hate to see that editing start. It's so torturous.
Right. Yeah, it's pretty, I enjoy it, but yeah, I mean, it can be pretty tedious.
Yeah. So you're also a writing mentor. So how does that work?
So that's a great question. So currently, I'm working primarily with coaches, consultants, and these folks want to write a book because it really builds their credibility, reputation, and market reach. So I have 90-day programs, 6 month, 9 month one-on-one programs, starting a group program in June. And literally, I have a 9 step process where I take them from book idea to final chapter. Some people need help with the mechanics of writing. A lot of people need mindset help. That think things like, oh, I'm not a writer, I can't do this, etc. Actually, a lot of people who are not writers by nature write some pretty interesting books. So, or things like, they just need deadlines. And plus, when somebody invests in a service such as coaching, that kind of, in my experience, I get coaching and I give coaching. In my experience, when I have skin in the game, so to speak, I'm going to actually do what I set out to do.
Yeah. So have you mentored a lot of writers?
I would say so, either informally or formally. When I was a journalist, especially when I got along my career, I was always kind of the person who unofficially mentored, trained the newer reporters, to people just out of college. So even in high school, like in Spanish class, for example, I would like mentor other students. So I would say I've mentored probably well over 100 people or more. Again, it's hard to know exact numbers over the years,
Yeah,
but yeah, I really enjoyed doing that. I really like helping people grow, seeing them reach their goals, whatever they may be.
yeah. So how many hours a week do you contribute to mentoring?
I would say it depends, because I think what a lot of people don't understand is there's a lot of marketing that goes into it to like get like people interested in that service. I would say right now probably 15 hours a week goes toward that. And then I would say another 20 into the editing and writing, and then perhaps 10 to 15 hours into marketing, especially on social media. So usually 40 to 50 hours a week.
Yeah. Is there one thing that you are consistently and constantly having to remind writers of?
Yes, to not show their writing to other people until they're done with it. I talked to somebody the other day. So I'm in a business coaching group. I participate in one. I'm like a member receiving coaching. And there was a woman who came to me because she started writing her book. And she's like, I did great for the first couple of chapters and I'm stuck and I don't know why and I need your help. And so I started asking her some questions. And what had happened was she had gotten all excited about this and she had sent those chapters to a bunch of her friends. Well, that
Oh,
was a big mistake because she said nobody was cruel, but some people had some negative things to say,
yeah,
and it frustrated her. So what I tell people is just write until you get that first draft done, and then just always be careful who you show your writing to. And I'm not one of those people that's paranoid about somebody stealing your work. That really rarely happens. I'm talking about mindset, getting discouraged. People may have good intentions, but they may also have their own agenda. What one person likes, another will hate. It's just, in my experience, I think it's just important to make sure you're surrounding yourself with positive people who know at least your industry, if not the craft of writing, and don't start showing it to people until you're in the editing process.
yeah. What do you say to those people? And there's plenty of them that say that everybody has a book in them.
I think it's true, but there was a woman I talked to about 6 weeks ago I do a lot of Zoom networking groups, especially being in Suriname. And she said, everybody says I need to write a book, blah, blah, blah. And she was like, felt like she needed my help. And I got into the discussion with her. Like I said, I'm a very ethical person. And I realized that she did not want to write this book and that was okay. And helped her reach a decision where she could tell people, thank you, but I just don't want to do it because it's work and it's
Oh,
putting yourself out there in a way that you can be open to a lot of criticism.
yeah. Yeah, you got to be willing to take whatever comes your way, you know. And some people are going to love it and some are going to hate it and some couldn't care less.
And all, in my experience, you can't like control whether somebody's going to like the content of your
Yeah,
book, But you can control things like I see all the time on Amazon people complaining, this book was not edited. I can tell. You can control things like, whether you invest in an editor or a good cover. There was somebody I worked with recently. He came to me through a friend. He was like, I have this great book on Amazon and nobody's buying it. So I wound up rewriting his author page and book description. So it's just things like that make a difference, often more so than what is actually in the book.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you didn't write, edit, and mentor, what did you think you'd be doing?
Probably something to do with dog rescue.
Really?
I
Okay.
would like to, have like an animal rescue farm or something like that. There's also a lot of homeless stray dogs in Suriname just because the
Yeah.
culture's different. There's not really an understanding or appreciation of the value of a dog. you know,
So have you written books about dogs?
I've written a children's book about dogs, but I haven't published it yet. I'm going to work on publishing some more of my own stuff.
Yeah.
But the next book I'm going to write will probably have something to do with my coaching business, just because it's a great way to bring more leads to you. Like a lot of people I've worked with, it's just a great way to bring more people to you. So I will probably write the next book, in my name, because I've done a lot of ghostwriting and writing under pseudonyms. But the next book in my name will probably be something to do with writing your book.
Yeah. So how long does it normally take to edit? I mean, I know some are longer than others, obviously, but what's the average time you spend editing a book?
I would say the average book, probably about 30 hours,
Yeah.
but it depends on a lot of things, the length of the book and also how good the writing is. Some people write better than others. Some books just need quick cleanups. Some need a lot of work. So I would say roughly 30 hours.
Yeah. So what do you suggest for people that have writer's block?
I kind of think writer's block is a lie. I wrote about this years ago in a book that's now off the market that's called How One Writer Shifted from Settling for $12 an Hour to Prospering at Over $90 an hour. I think writer's block is kind of a lie because you could literally just sit down and start typing, I have nothing to write about. And I promise you, stuff will start coming. Julia Cameron and other teachers talk about the morning pages where you just write free form, whatever. So I think writer's block is more of a mental mindset block than like a reality.
Yeah. Now, for me, I write in spurts. Sometimes I
Okay.
may go for months and not write anything at all. And then I might decide, well, okay, I'm going to take this week and finish a book. And I usually have about half a dozen in the works at the same time. So I never know when or if any of them are going to get published. But that works for me. That works for me.
Hey, if it works for you, I mean, that's great. I do, when I coach people or teach, I tend to advise people to try to focus on one book at a time and try to schedule time for writing. But your goals are probably very different from the folks that I tend to work with. So I say whatever works for you. I know people have had like unpublished books for 19 years. I have finished children's book manuscripts that I just haven't put out there and self published yet because I've been focusing on other things. So I don't think there's any law. There's suggestions, tips. I'm definitely not the be all end all. I know what I'm talking about. But that's why I enjoy working with people one on one because I can really sit down with them and figure out. Like, for example, I had a client who is better at telling stories and being on video than writing. So I had her speak her life stories into like a voice to text and we did that and I edited it and now it's about to be published. So there's other ways to write and publish a book than the traditional.
Yeah. So at what point in your writing did you decide, no, I want to edit and mentor instead? And what brought about that decision?
I think, like I said, I always had my toes in it. I had relatives who were writers, published authors, etc. As somebody who worked for newspapers, if somebody in the community wanted a book edited, they usually would come looking for me. I guess in the last couple of years, I really decided to focus on it more. because, like I said, I enjoyed it more. I was starting to get burned out. I mean, I wrote at least 6,000 articles during my newspaper career of 17 years. That's like
Wow.
400 articles a year. And so I got burned out, I'll just be honest. So also, especially during the pandemic, there's been a lot of people online called themselves like content writers and copywriters and charging rock bottom prices. And I found it was a lot harder to get paid what I'm worth for writing.
Yeah.
And I find that people are more willing to pay for an expert or an editor because they're like, okay, well, you have all this great experience writing, but the person up the street is probably going to do a good job and is going to charge like half as much.
Yeah. Do you think the average reader actually knows all that much about punctuation and spelling of words? Do you think that's a big deal for most readers?
I want to say yes because I'm seeing all these reviews on Amazon, and maybe these are just like a vocal minority. But yeah, I mean, I don't think most. I mean, okay, so the average person probably isn't going to notice if a comma's in the wrong place. Okay, I mean yeah, that's a little nitpicky. Some people might not know the difference between TO and TOO. So it's just hard to say, but like with all the comments I'm seeing on Amazon and Goodreads and other sites where people like this book was obviously not edited, I think people, especially with people reading more during the pandemic, are, you know, pretty discriminating. And there's also a lot of self publishing, especially in recent years, has allowed people to literally put out almost anything they want. And readers are getting more discriminating. They don't want to see garbage. I always tell people self published doesn't have to mean bad.
Yeah. Of course, a lot of people can't afford editors too. I'm sure you know that, and I'm sure someone with
Yeah.
your experience, for example, does not come cheap. So, I
No,
think
it
a lot of
doesn't.
people have to deal with it.
Yeah, I think I'm closer to the middle. I try to be conscious of it. Like, I try not to overcharge people.
Yeah.
I've seen people charging $10,000, $15,000 to edit a book. I don't think that's very
Really?
ethical
Wow.
because, when somebody's self-publishing, they're not guaranteed that they're going to get their money back right away. There's a lot of
Exactly.
or ever. There's a lot of elements that go into it. At the same time, I'm also believe that my experience is worth a lot more than a couple $100. So you're going to see everything from like $150 to $15,000.
Yeah. So
I,
do
I
you charge by the word, by the page, or by the hour, or how do you charge?
generally I try to charge by the word. So it just depends. It also depends on what type editing they need. So there's copy editing, that's like the grammar and all that stuff. There's content editing, especially for fiction writers, where they want to see, is there a hole in my story? Is there something missing? Did I say something the wrong way? Then there's proofreading, where you're really going through and checking for typos, commas, proper usage of words.
Yeah.
Some people tend to want the content editing, but most want the copy editing and the proofreading. So it just depends. And again, I like to give one price. I've seen some editors, I've checked out my competition plenty, that are like, well, if you want copy editing, it's going to be 7 cents a word. And if you want content editing, that's going to be another 10 cents a word. I'm like, that's just crazy.
Yeah. And most people will say, just edit the book. I don't know what all that stuff means.
Yeah, some people do tell me that. And I can usually tell when I have the conversation with them what they know and don't know. And some people are very good at doing their research. Like, I had someone come to me recently from Clubhouse. I don't know if you know that app, but a lot of people have been getting on it and literally audio speaking. And she was like, I think I might need a content edit and a copy edit. And I had her send me a sample chapter, and we wound up deciding she didn't need the content edit. So again, I'm going to stay in integrity to myself, but also to the client, because I'm aware that the cost of getting good book cover, good graphic design, and good editing
Yeah.
is not cheap.
So do you read a lot just for the pleasure when you're not editing?
I'll say lately, not much, because I just have started getting burned out. Because right now I have a waiting list for editing. So I'm working on a couple books right now. And usually it's like after the whole day with words, I just kind of want to do something else, like go play a game on my phone or watch TV, or I do study foreign languages. So I'll probably read something in another language like Portuguese or Dutch,
Yeah.
but I haven't been reading for pleasure nearly as much lately.
I imagine it's hard for you to turn off the editor in you when you're reading, isn't it?
Yes, that's another thing. That's
Yeah.
another reason I like to read in other languages. Although I'm starting to get to the point, especially in Portuguese, where I notice if somebody's making a mistake.
Yeah. It's easy to notice things like that sometimes when you're reading, you know. I certainly don't consider myself an editor, but sometimes when I'm reading, I think, wow, did they really want to leave that there?
I know, right?
Yeah. And that Oxford comma, that drives everybody crazy.
It does, and I see it used inconsistently. Unless they tell me not to, I believe in using it. But there are some people that will use it in one part and not use it in the other, and that's one of the things, the inconsistencies I talked about earlier.
Yeah.
That's one of the things I've got to look out for.
The thing that I have a hard time remembering is when to use own to as one word or two words. I seem to struggle with that and I can't remember which is which.
Which word? I didn't hear the first
On
one.
to, is it one word on to or on
It
to?
depends on the context.
Yeah, yeah, I get that confused a lot.
Right. And at the end of the day, something like that's not the biggest deal in the world, because there are some things that could be either or. Like, for instance, traveling. Some people spell it with two L's, some people spell it with one. I'm
Yeah,
not married to either one. I prefer the one, but if somebody's using two, I'm not going to change it just for the sake of changing it unless they keep switching back and forth.
yeah. Now, English authors, for example, they have a whole different spelling of a lot of words and different rules in grammar, correct?
Yes, they do. I used to edit for some British and Australian clients, but I haven't done it as much lately. I'm pretty good with British English, but obviously my expertise, my native language, is American English. But yes, they also, in some languages such as Portuguese and Spanish, don't believe in the Oxford comma. So, and British people tend not to use that Oxford comma as much. So, there are some differences. And like I said, I've really gotten more laser focused in the past couple years. I mean, if somebody came to me and they happen to be from Britain or Australia, I don't discriminate and I have the skills, but I haven't really been marketing to those
Yeah.
audiences.
Of course, a lot of people listening to this are going to say, "What are you talking about, Oxford comma?" And
Right.
I just tell them you probably don't even need to know.
No, probably not. It basically is like, it's really hard to explain out loud. It would be easier to show it, but you can look it up on Google and make your own decision. It basically has to do with the word and, commas, and like a list of things.
Uh, so, do you think all writers have a muse?
That's a tricky question because, again, like I said earlier, if you sit around, most people, I'm not talking about you, Steve, but for most people, they just sit around waiting for inspiration or a muse. Nothing's going to get done. I think there is natural ability, but I also believe that some things, especially with the way publishing has gone and writing has gone, can be like learned and fostered. There's hacks to get around traditional writing, like I said, videos, speaking. I've had a lot of attorneys and realtors do that too. They turn their videos and stuff into books. So I think it's something that can be learned. There's going to be people who have a more natural ability,
Yeah,
but they're it's just tricky because I think that's a mindset thing, waiting for the muse or the inspiration.
yeah. So, have you been rejected a lot by publishers over the years?
Not really, but I mean, well, when I was doing freelance journalism, on top of my day job, I got some rejection. And when I submitted poems to publish, I got some rejection. But I don't think I got the like hundreds of rejection letters, but my path has been different. I haven't been one of those people sitting around trying to get an agent and publish a novel for 15 years. I know some people who are doing that because they're just stuck on the traditional idea of getting the agent, getting the book
Yeah.
deal, etc. So I don't have like wallpaper of rejections.
I'm fascinated with the story of what's her name, R.K. Dowling, J.K. Dowling, or whatever, the lady that wrote the Harry Potter books. She got so many rejections and then decided to publish it herself and became a multi-millionaire because of it.
Yeah, last I heard, she might. Well, there was a controversy about her recently, but last I heard, she was on her way to becoming like a billionaire. But I don't know if
Really.
that's still the case.
Yeah.
Well, because the movie rights and everything, the
Yeah.
whole franchise that got derived from it. But there was some controversy about some things she said about
Yeah.
transgendered folks. So I think she's not quite as beloved now.
Yeah. And then do you recall Alex Haley, who became very, very famous, and then years later it was discovered it was a lot of plagiarized things, and a lot of it supposedly he called truth was actually fiction.
Yes, yes, and that happened with a New York Times reporter called Jason Blair a long,
Yeah.
long time ago. So yeah, I remember all those controversies, and as a working journalist at that time, I was horrified and shocked that people would go to such lengths.
Yeah. I think throughout history, there's been a lot of, how should I say, unscrupulous authors.
Well, that applies to everything, though,
Yeah, it
unscrupulous.
is.
But yeah, there's unscrupulous people who are saying they're publishers, and then they're trying to charge authors money to publish.
Yeah,
And ever do that, please.
yeah,
Either self-publish, if you can come to me for guidance, or pursue the traditional agent, etc. route. Although that will take years and doesn't necessarily lead to success, although some people have had success. But yeah, don't ever pay for somebody to publish your book. I mean,
yeah,
yes, you have to pay for services such as a cover and editing, but don't like, there was a woman on Clubhouse the other night who said a publisher said, pay us $8,000 and we'll, you know, get your book and all this stuff. And we all told her in that room, please don't do that.
yeah. If you've got that kind of money to give the editor, pay somebody to edit it and market it yourself, right?
And if you work with somebody like me, you're not going to need $8,000.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
They say the
Well,
average price to self-publish a book is $10,000, but really you can get it closer to five, depending on what services you need. And if it's a shorter book, you can get it done for a couple $1,000s. So yeah, please don't pay anybody to publish
yeah.
your book.
So do you have a website that people can contact you who want to hire you?
Yes, so you can actually get my free ebook, Three Things You Must Know Before Writing Your Book, at gettheirattentionnow.com/book. That's gettheirattentionnow.com/book. There's also the main website that has information about my programs, self study courses, etc. I'm on all sorts of social media and would really love to hear from folks.
Okay, is there anything else you want to say that I have not given you the opportunity to say?
I just want to say that people who are thinking about writing a book, just try not to overcomplicate it. I just encourage people to start writing anywhere. It doesn't You don't have to write it from beginning to end. That's another common misconception. Just write. And if some people get up 30 minutes earlier, an hour earlier, it can be done. And even if it takes you a long time, it's still better to get started than to just sit around and think about it.
Yeah. And if your book sucks, then it's still not the end of the world. You can do another one, right?
No, there's plenty of people who had like, crappy first book, second
Yeah.
book. Some people that I know have published 140 books, especially if you're doing kids' books. Yeah, I mean, but again, just when you put yourself out there, just learn to grow a thick skin.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much, Stephanie, for being my guest. I've enjoyed talking to you.
Thank you so much,
And,
Steve.
I encourage anyone that needs editing or writing done or a mentor to give Stephanie a chance. She sounds like she definitely knows what she's talking about, and she has tons of experience to back it up. So I appreciate it. And folks, thanks for tuning in to Holding On with Holder. Please subscribe to my channel and feel free to share this video all over social media. Stephanie, I will let you go, and thank you again for being my guest.
Thank you, Steve. Have a great night.
Thank you. You too. Bye-bye.